There's this balance in parenting between protection and empowerment.
The rule is that we run. We just keep going. I feel like parenting in general perhaps has changed a lot. So I just think that maybe we have more research and more tools for parenting in general. Sometimes as a parent, you just need that little reminder, you know? So like even a text, a picture with an example or something that motivates me, like, I need to do this, you know? Like I feel like it's so helpful. Not everyone that had a tough childhood becomes bad.
One of the things I found with working with parents with bullying is we're not proactive enough. You know, we don't approach bullying the same way, but we should. You take a child through a kind of role-playing game, they're really immersive. It's a great way to prepare them for something difficult. I've got so much respect for single moms because of the fact that a lot of the time they have to balance two roles. So many amazing insights in this chat for parents. Really, really amazing. I had an amazing interview just now with Karen Drain. Karen is the founder of Curveball Events. She's also the manager of some very well-known celebs here in Dubai, including Chris Fade. Karen is a single mum of two amazing kids and provides so many fantastic insights into what it's like to raise kids in Dubai, what it's like to be a single mum. And we talk a lot about parenting, the challenges that parents typically go through, and how you can operate as a parent to really give your kids the best head start in life. It was a great chat, very, very funny, super authentic conversation. So I think you're going to really enjoy this one. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, let the people at home know who you are and what you do.
So I have a company that does events. We do events. We specialize in long-term relationships with clients, corporate events, gala dinners, community events, for instance, loads of fun. And then I manage some talents in the region, so like Chris Fade, Pretty Malik, and a few more.
Amazing. Yeah. So you moved to Dubai in 2007. I imagine a lot's changed since then.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot has changed, but like when I got here, it was fantastic. Mind you, I came here to study as well. So I dropped out of law school.
Okay.
And I started studying here in Emirates Academy. So I just floated through 2008, you know, like I was living in student accommodation, like I didn't have a job to lose, you know what I mean?
Right,
It was amazing here, like
good timing.
Crazy.
Good timing to be here then. That's interesting. So, I mean, the buildings, the infrastructure, everything is completely transformed since then, right?
I feel like almost downtown and the marina, like they're almost merged now, but then it was like separate. It was like
two sections.
Yeah.
So what brought you here for studying then?
Exactly that. I was in law school and I just felt like, wow, am I going to be a lawyer locked to one country? What if I want to move somewhere else, or if I want to live somewhere else? And then I started looking around, and Dubai was the place that I ended up in.
Amazing.
Luckily, because wow.
And you've loved it here since, or?
This is home for me.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm born in Sweden, but I'm made in Dubai. Like my entire grown-up life is here. Like this is my home.
How do you think life growing up in Sweden differs for kids compared to the UAE?
I think a lot of the difference is that you become independent a little bit earlier in terms of, you know, you have to walk to school, there's a lot of playtime outside, you know, so that is a huge difference, I think. Whereas here, we go from, you know, car, like in one house to another location. And I think that, like, obviously I can't send my 8-year-olds and like, yo, go over there, or I can't send them to walk for 45 minutes to school like I did. But that was amazing independence for me when I was young, you know, like to meet up with my friends who didn't have phones then because I'm old, you know, like landline, it wouldn't matter to be on time or you got left behind. Like now it's like, okay, you're not on time, maybe you'll miss the school bus. Otherwise, mommy or daddy will just get a bit frustrated and upset, but like, that's it, you know, still get in the car, in the AC and get to school.
It's interesting. I'm half Danish. I've got a lot of Danish family, and I do see that as well, right? The kids, I mean, it's considered a very safe country.
Yeah.
Denmark and Sweden as well, and so, you know, encouraging the kids to get themselves to school, cycling to school from a very young age.
Yeah.
Right? Go to the park on their own, all this sort of stuff's just considered quite normal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And imagine, like literally for me, from when I was maybe 9 or 10, for the majority, for like the next 6 years, I would walk to school a good 45 minutes one way and then back, like the exercise of that. And again, now that I know a bit more about sports, you know, like not only for like keeping fit, but also for the mind, you know, that adds something to the children when you blow off that steam after a long day in school, or, you know, like it's important. But what I will say is that, like, obviously, I have a lot of friends still in Sweden, and you cannot compete with how many experiences there are for children, like Dubai has.
Yeah.
Forget it.
I can relate to that.
You know, like, there's so much stuff to do. It's so stimulating for them. There's so many things, like active things, and like their perspective is totally different, you know, and that is a head start.
One of the things I love about raising kids here is just how what access they've got to different cultures. You know, my daughter's in a class with maybe 10 different nationalities, right? Whereas in the countryside of England where we're from, that would be, you know, she would only meet one or two different nationalities. So it's that, and I think gives them a very global mindset, right?
Yeah, I think so too. I agree 100% on that.
And I mean, going back to that, what you were saying about the way in which they would go to school as an example of independence. Here, it's a very, very safe country.
Oh, very.
But the challenge then is the roads aren't particularly safe, right? So you can't exactly walk 45 minutes to school as a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old. And so therein lies one of the challenges. And I do think that kids here are outside a lot, but there's 4 or 5 months of the year where they're not.
Yeah.
Say the same thing about in being in Sweden or Scandinavia, right? Because of the winter.
Yeah.
Are they outside as much, right?
That's the thing. But then I think as well, when they reach a certain age and, you know, they're not 7 or 8, or when they actually can be away from you, the safety of this country steps in and enables them to be more independent.
Right.
Because, I mean, even in Sweden, that was considered, when I was growing up, super, super safe. You know, like, we didn't lock our front door, exactly like here at that time. But I still, you know, when I would walk home, I lived in a very beautiful community, you know, like nearby to the capital, safe. But I still felt unsafe. And my parents would say, like, no, you're not allowed to walk through the park when it's dark. Like, here, well, you can do what you want when it's dark.
You wouldn't think about that as much.
No, at all. And I think that, you know, for teenagers, it's beautiful to grow up here because you can be so independent without worrying about those elements, if that makes sense.
Do you think that's beneficial long term? I'd look at it like
you mean are they going up like
in a bubble? Because I look at the way in which we raise our kids, and I feel like there's a huge element of overprotection. The way I see, and it relates to one of the conversations we've had earlier. There's this balance in parenting between protection and empowerment, right? And we want to protect our kids. That's our initial job as parents, right? That's the basis is to keep your kids safe.
Yeah.
But the problem is we can overprotect, and then they're not prepared for adult life.
Yeah.
And so there's, you know, if they're in such a safe environment like being in the UAE, where they don't lock their cars, they don't look at strangers with the same potential malice or expectation of danger that they would if they were, you know, growing up in the UK or Sweden or whatever.
Sure.
And so when they then go off and travel when they're older, they don't have that kind of, they're not as streetwise potentially, right?
I agree, and I'd like to throw in another element there as well, because I had kind of that upbringing in Sweden, right? Because I grew up in a country that was considered more safe than others, which is what my children are doing now.
Yeah.
So it was taught to me. And yes, I was not as street smart if I went to a country, you know, a developing country that I had high crime rate, but it just means that there's heavier pressure on you to inform and show examples beforehand. Right. So I definitely, like, of course, if my children don't travel at all, you know, like they're not going to have this soft start into it, right? But I think it's just bigger pressure on the parents, the same way it would have been in Sweden for my parents to explain to me, like, yo, certain things that we do here, we cannot do in other countries. You have to think about this. You have to be mindful. But then I'm just thinking, isn't that part of children's development all throughout?
Yeah.
Because the older you get, you have to start acting differently in restaurants or acting differently in public. You have to change as you get older.
I guess what a privilege it is to be able to raise your kids in such a safe environment. The pressure, like you said, is on making sure they then experience microdoses of danger.
Yeah.
Right? So not eradicating danger entirely, actually putting them into experiences where they can feel uncomfortable, they can experience high pressure or danger. Yeah. Traveling is a great opportunity for that.
Great one. And I think, you know, when I moved here, so my father, bless him, just before I moved here, so for him, he had not been to Dubai, you know, and I had only been to Dubai one time before I went here. And so he like, let's go for a drive. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? You know, why am I in trouble? And he had this like deep conversation with me because for him, he just thought I'm moving to the Middle East, you know, bless it. So he thought it would be unsafe and all this. And so with him, he's like, listen, it's going to be different now that you moved there. And I'm like, okay. He's like, so I want you to, you have to have this and this and this. And he told me in words I cannot mention here, but, he told me to have savings for 3 months. So if I was to be, losing my job, I would have 3 months to sort it out, or if I didn't want to stay in a relationship, I could always leave the person. Or if I was married, I could leave the person. So he would give me guidelines for like, for this environment, I believe you should incorporate this and this and this.
So he saw Dubai as high risk, like you moving here, Middle East in general.
So he had no idea how Dubai was.
So when you did move here, did it feel the same?
It was different than Sweden.
Well, yeah, and that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Did he grew up all his life in Sweden and stayed in Sweden?
Yeah, he traveled a lot, but like, he draws his own conclusions.
Yeah, of course. When you first came here 17 years ago, was it as safe, or was it considered as safe? Did it feel as safe?
Yeah, I would say so. The safety, I felt a lot of the communication in media, etc., was on the safety. And, like for me, it was refreshing as well. Because I had studied law, I was always frustrated that the punishments and, the prison, etc., it wasn't harsh enough, I felt, to be deterring. Whereas here, it was really high emphasis on like, follow the law.
Or you're in a lot of trouble.
Like, or you'll find out,
Yeah.
And I found that refreshing. And that's maybe because I don't have a tendency to break the law. So I'm just happy, I don't mind cameras everywhere. I'm happy to do that. What are you going to see? Like me picking my nose? Like, who cares? So I would rather have safety and cameras everywhere. And that we don't have in Sweden, but we have it here. So I felt like I related to a lot of things, and I was very grateful for a lot of things.
That's really interesting. 'Cause in Sweden, there isn't that surveillance like in the UK.
Not to the same extent.
It's like we invented the CCTV, right? But
we have privacy, which I also understand. And like, I love so many aspects of Sweden. I love so many, Europe in general. So I'm not trying to bash them, but I just think that like privacy is fantastic, but not at the expense of safety. I'd rather have safety and people being able to see what I do than the other way around.
Like, I guess it's looking at it like, are you willing to give up privacy in order to have, if you've got nothing to hide, then you don't have to worry about it, right? There's one way of looking at it.
That's it. And I think, again, if you are bothered by privacy, then just wait till you have kids and you ask the question again. Do I want privacy for them, or do I want them to be safe? I think the answer is really, really simple then.
Yeah. Really interesting. You studied law in the UAE, and then in
Sweden. Then I went to hospitality management here.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So then you studied hospitality management here.
That's how I got into events.
Okay, so tell me, gone to events. What was your first experience?
Oh my God, my first
into Middle Eastern events.
My first one. So because it's hospitality, they let us do training outside. So I think my very first was in the World Cup. So all the students from the school, or not all, but a lot of them, they would assist on like part-time work at the World Cup. So like, holding a tray with glasses. And for some reason, they put me in the royal box for the World Cup with my friends. Oh, it was the most pressure I've ever felt, because it was the female box. But, like by the time we came in, and I felt so responsible for my other students, like my fellow students that were there. And I was just shaking with the tray because, we just got here basically. That was my first one. And then after that, like there was so much part-time work here then. So I was handling out sodas and real estate, whatever, like exhibitions. I worked with so many different ones. So sampling, and it was so easy then to get work like that. So it was perfect with my studies.
And you've been doing events since?
I got into it, and then eventually, one of my clients was an agency, and they had an end client that took me aside and like, why don't you start your own company? And we'll move our contracts to you. That was African and Eastern. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Huge clients. So I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Well, no, it was too much pressure, and I just caved it. And I stayed studying, which was safe, right? But it became a big regret. So the next time I got this opportunity was a few years later. You mingle, you meet people here, there, and I ran into someone that knew someone, and they're like, oh, aren't you in events? I'm like, yes, I am in events. They're like, are we looking for someone to reignite our event company? It's been just we have a holding company. I'm like, I'm in. I had no idea how to do anything.
Really?
So I was like, I just need one more team member. They're like, okay. And then I went to my old agent, and I was like, you want to work for me? She's like, for you? I'm the one who gives you the job. What do you mean? I'm like, come on, let's go. And she's become a lifelong friend. So that's how we started. We started with a company that we were running for a larger group. And then we parted ways in about 9 months or something. We parted ways. And that's when I was like, let me do my own thing.
Yeah.
I worked a bit for a bigger event company. I learned more, because you should always learn on someone else's time, right? And then when I felt I was ready, I set up my own.
It's interesting, isn't it? A lot of people want to start their own businesses, but they don't realize the value of employment for learning is massive, right? Oftentimes, I think the first 5 to 10 years that you could have especially if you're in a very entrepreneurial business, you can learn so much, especially if you're working close to the family. Especially and if it's a fast-growing business as well, you can pick up so much, which you can then use later in life. It's a hidden value, right?
If I wanted to change career, I would work for free for someone. I would just pick the one who knows the most, and I'd be like, yo, let me tail you around, That's how I learned sales.
I feel like people are too proud to work for free. They don't necessarily look at it like they're willing to give their time, you know what I mean?
Too proud or unable. I think maybe I say that because I was like, I could plan in a way that I could fix my expenses for a certain amount of time. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting in a privileged position.
Yeah.
Someone who's a student is sitting in a privileged position too because they can stay with mom and dad, right? But not everybody is able to work for free. So there's maybe part of that ego, but I think also like to say that everybody can do it, I think it's
got to be practical, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to be able to meet your needs, your basic needs. But
I would.
But certainly taking a cut on your income in order to learn, and then you make up with the learning.
100%.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
When did you start managing individuals and talent?
Shortly after I started my company. Maybe after the summer of 2014, type of thing. And I started my company in February 2014. So it was...
So the first individual you managed, who was that?
Chris Fate.
That was Chris Fate.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years ago then?
Almost. Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago.
Next year is 10 years.
Because he's had quite a journey, hasn't he, over the last 10 years? Yeah. And that's all down to you?
No, it's not at all down to me. No, you know what, you cannot find a person that works harder. I'll just say that, you cannot outwork him. I'm pretty close sometimes, but you cannot outwork him. The man is phenomenal. Work ethic like no other.
It's interesting how a lot of people look at very successful individuals and they don't see that, right? They don't see what goes on behind the scenes.
No, and most people have a very curated feed, right? Like, I'm not going to show when I'm sitting working on presentations or the amount of calls I do in an hour. Like,
that's not interesting for most
people. Not care, like although that's maybe a handbook, to how what you should be doing. I think so much goes on behind the scenes. But in the talents, when you are successful like that as an entertainer, it comes down a lot to yourself. They have to still stay in touch with their clients. They have to be nice, they have to perform, and they have so much. They have to project all the time and have this energy, and authentically as well, so there's a lot of pressure on them. But then, of course, if you don't have good management, it doesn't matter if you're a great talent. And the same way, if you're great management, that doesn't matter if you don't have a great talent. So, of course, having good management is going to help you along the way, but it's very hard to make someone they make themselves, and then you support throughout the journey, if that makes sense.
Sounds exhausting, right? It's like when you were describing that, to me, there's two ways to look at it. I mean for the people you're managing.
Oh yeah, I just said that
not for you,
yeah.
Well, and for you, but just constantly having to entertain, constantly to be in the public eye, and you know what I mean. And constantly having to show your authentic self, and the amount of pressure there is interesting, right? Because that must be exhausting over time.
I'm sure it is, but I think they also get immense amounts of love. And I think it's when you are a creative person, an entertainer, it somehow energizes you as well,
right,
to be creative, right? So, but physically it's exhausting, right? Chris Fate could probably host for 16 hours if he wanted to. He loves what he does, but physically it takes a toll if we were to do that. So that also requires,
In your role in managing, really talented individuals who take on all this extra pressure, and you're seeing what they go through. Do obviously you're there to help make sure they got the right gigs and they're looked after properly and they're on the right path. Do you ever spot men getting close to burnout and then saying no to things, even if they want to do it? Do you kind of protect them a little bit? Is that part of your role?
I think it's part of our role. I think it's important to have an open communication. I think I definitely know them really well. I'm not perfect in, identifying their needs, but I think I have a good idea of what they can handle. But we have a very open communication, and they have a lot of self-insight. So generally speaking, the rule is that we run. We just keep going. We push on as much as we can, and they say when to slow down.
Okay.
In general.
Do you find that it comes in like it's seasonal? Like they do sprints and then they rest completely in the sprints?
The industry is seasonal still, so after the summer, like a lot of the pre-planning, so we're still very busy admin-wise over the summer, but the actual operations of the events and the content predominantly is from, I would say, late August onwards, school start. That kicks it all off, and then it goes usually all the way until May, June. But because the Ramadan has shifted as well, the industry across a lot of industries, I would say.
There's almost like a second part now for the summer, right?
Yeah, so last summer was a lot busier than normal.
Yeah.
Because you had time after Ramadan, so.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a really fascinating business and role you've got, right? I mean,
lovely business.
You must experience so much, and there's traveling involved, and.
We don't travel much because we're so busy here. We do some gigs here and there, obviously, but generally speaking, our priority is the region for now, just because there's so much going on here, and it's hard to justify flying out for one event and maybe missing out on the things that we're doing here.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's traveling involved, but no, usually not for me. Okay. We're just very busy. Just working pretty much every day over here.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you've got a very unique insight into raising two twins, two young girls in Dubai.
Yeah.
And being half from Scandinavia, I also understand the kind of parenting style from Scandinavia. And, my mum was Danish, so I get that a lot. And it's obviously quite different to the parenting style out here. How do you see
well, I don't know. How was your mom?
Well,
before I agree to that statement.
The Danes and the Danes and
that statement, I don't know.
Well, the Danes put the babies out in the cold in their plums.
My mom didn't.
It was a tough upbringing, freezing.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I can't sort of. I think that Danes are raised in a slightly different way to children in the Middle East. We talked about the independence side of things.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any kind of cultural differences in how the children are raised here?
I don't know if I have reflected about that in particular. I feel like parenting in general perhaps has changed a lot. Like, I'm very into responsive parenting, although it's exhausting, but I'm into it. And I feel like maybe, especially when my mom visits, my mom is super hands-on with the kids. Like, she'll crawl around on the floor. She'll play with them immersively for 2 hours. Like, she is a great grandma.
Right.
But she's also like, well, if it's a tantrum, she's just thinking like, that's not the way to behave. And I'm like, well, we have to give them space to explain their feelings. So I just think that maybe we have more research and more tools for parenting in general. I feel like that has probably added on because although my parents were amazing, I feel like I had an amazing childhood at least.
Yeah.
I think the parenting techniques now are different. We have so many more tools, I
often look at it like, you can look back at your own parents and you can criticize and you can judge and all this sort of stuff, and it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to critique. But you weren't them. You weren't in their position. You weren't in their situation.
100%.
You didn't have the education they had.
100%.
You didn't have the upbringing they had.
Yes.
And so, I think parenting evolves, and I think the way we should look at it is, we've got to evolve with that. And part of our job is just to constantly learn and try and improve on. You take the best bits of the childhood you had and the parenting you experienced, and then you try and add your own kind of twist to it, right?
Just pick a child expert that you like.
Yeah.
Follow. They are whiny. Just check, what to do. They'll have a suggestion, which is based on like 700 case studies.
Yeah.
You're more likely to get it right that way than to like, Mom, what did you do?
Yeah.
To be honest.
But then here's
stats.
the tricky thing is, right? There are just like finding a business mentor or whatever it is. There are so many conflicting ways of doing it.
Yeah.
You could search for one thing and have 10 different opinions on how to do this with your child. So I do agree that you should pick one way of doing something and try and do that. But always questioning things is a good idea as well.
Source criticism. So
yeah.
A little bit of research if you're going to base your child.
Totally. If you're going to base the next 20 years of upbringing on...
Yeah.
But it is important to question, ideas and teaching techniques and this sort of stuff.
I think so, but I think social media now, I know you can't believe everything on social media, but it serves a good purpose for me, at least, speaking for myself, as reminders, because I obviously follow the accounts that inspire me in parenting. But sometimes as a parent, you just need that little reminder, so like even a text, a picture with an example or something that motivates me, like, yeah, I need to do this, like I feel like it's so helpful, and I imagine a lot of moms get a lot of help from social media, like I think it's okay, maybe a little bit the topic in terms of mommy influencers, right? I'm sure there are different opinions on this, but aside from like if you're really exploiting your children and forcing them to film for 4 hours, like that's not what I'm talking about. But if there's a way for you to authentically share good tips of what to do when you're with your children or play with them, or when you're nesting, for instance, before pregnancy or after the birth, like, isn't that wonderful that there's a platform where you can share that with the entire world rather than with just the people that are around you?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's beautiful.
I think that is amazing, but it also takes these individuals quite a lot of courage to do it, right? Because there's so much criticism out there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You must see this a lot, right? Like with the people you manage, it doesn't matter how good your intentions are. You could have a completely, pure intention to just do something to help people, and you will be criticized for it. It's amazing. I mean, if you look at some of the stuff we do, we work with kids to develop their confidence. Like it's the most wholesome thing you can possibly do, right? And every now and again we'll get a weird troll who comments something really negative, and it's like, a lot of this stuff it comes down from, their own negativity. And it's just like any bullying, right? Yeah. It's like, they're not a bad person. They're often going through something. They might be a bad person. It might be.
I think it takes a lot, like for you to feel so sad in yourself that you have to publicly tell something negative about someone or a company.
When it's clear they're doing something with good intentions.
Yeah, or even, who says you're right? Like, just keep it to yourself. Like, act like a grown-up. Go to someone, talk it out, and then continue with your life, like to go into conflict like that is very unhealthy.
Just a quick shout out to the guys at Shield who manage this podcast, come up with the strategy behind the podcast, help me schedule interviews, as well as do all of the editing and the producing of the podcast. Without them, we wouldn't be able to produce this podcast. If you would like to create your own podcast, I can't recommend the Shield team enough. They have done well over 100 episodes for me over the last few years, and I've been so pleased with the results. So have a look in the description of this video or the podcast episode, and you'll see how to get in touch with them yourself. I guess human beings are trying to find respect, aren't they? They're out there and they're commenting and they're trying to get, appreciation from themselves and respect. And
I wonder if it would be the same if everybody had to tie their ID to their user.
Yeah. Right. This is the problem with cyber.
Still be so loud?
I don't think so. I think people are, it's very easy to hide behind an alias, right? To be anonymous.
Yeah.
And it gives them this sense of power.
Yeah.
That they can try and make someone feel bad.
Yeah.
When they do that, when they write that comment.
Yeah.
And it's normally because, but this is the same reason bullying happens. The bully typically lacks some sort of control or power in their life, so they try and seek it by victimizing someone else, right?
Yeah. And I think that's also a tricky thing with children, because children act out, and it's so hard to identify what is happening. It's easy to fix the acting out, right?
Yeah.
But what's the origin of this? To get to the root cause is so hard. And if you don't have parents that are actively involved in that, or maybe parents that don't have enough insight to be like, yo, I could be the problem here. Like, maybe I'm the first bully of my child, maybe I'm too harsh on them, or which is horrible, but do you have enough insight to question yourself on that as well? Because nobody's a perfect parent.
No.
But then when they're acting out like this, it's you need a strong family background. And even if you have a messy home or messy upbringing, like it doesn't justify you as well acting negatively and bad against everyone, because not everyone that had a tough childhood becomes bad.
No.
You know, it's just a very, very convenient excuse, you know?
I think going through anything traumatic has the ability to make or break someone's character.
Yeah.
So, and that could be a tough childhood, that could be a lack of nurturing support, whatever it is. Or it could be too much or something, right? Too much nurturing could actually be a bad childhood.
For sure.
And so, too much protection, let's say. So, again, we see that with bullying, right? Someone goes through that and then they either become a bully themselves or they develop more courage because of it, not in spite of it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, really interesting point there.
And children are quite harsh as well. I spent a lot of time just worrying a little bit, like, what do I do if my children become bullied, you know? Or if they become bullies?
Yeah.
Oh, you know?
Yeah.
And that was sparked because of when we started with their school, they told us their bullying policy was like to handle it within the school before they informed the parents. I was like, yo, no, I want to be involved from the beginning. I'll sit back, but I just want to know, you know, because it's important.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's interesting. So that school would try and resolve it, and then if it escalates.
Yeah. But I'm sure that would be a short time frame. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Nevertheless, I was like, no, let's bypass that.
Yeah. I mean, the tricky thing is then, parents, they want to know straight away, but not all parents approach it in a kind of calm way. They tend to be very reactive. One of the things I found with working with parents through bullying is we're not proactive enough, right? So we know our children are likely to get bullied, a bit like crossing the road. We teach our children there is a danger out there. There's a driver coming. He could be on his phone. You need to get eye contact. You need to know how to cross it. Look left and right. Use the zebra crossing or whatever, right? Whereas, we don't approach bullying the same way, but we should, because we know it's out there. It's likely to happen, and instead we're just reactive when it happens. And when we're reactive,
it's too late, right?
Yeah, when we're reactive, we don't make the best decisions.
I spoke to my children, and again, social media. I saw this lovely video. I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about how to handle bullies, and they made an example. Maybe you've seen it. So he's on stage and he's like, tell me something mean, like, say I'm ugly. They're like, are you ugly? He's like, okay, I am.
Yeah, just neutralizes it.
Neutralize.
Yeah.
Because what are they going to say back? And I spent a lot of time doing that with my kids, because kids care so much.
Yeah.
And one of my daughters will be like, she doesn't want to play with me. I'm like, that's okay. Don't run after her to play. You go ahead. You play more fun alone and she'll come back to you. But you have to give kids tools. And I think, again, what a responsibility it is to be a parent.
Totally. That's really interesting. So with that example, when it came to the bullying, did you do like a role-playing game with your child?
100%.
This is great, like a great parenting hack, role-playing game. Yeah. And kids they use their imagination a lot. Yeah. And, when you take a child through a kind of role-playing game, they're really immersive. They're in it. They're responding. And a lot of the time, it's a great way to prepare them for something difficult in a fun and engaging way. Yeah. Right? And so...
And one of mine, there was a situation where a boy said something to her, and she came back and told me that she had done this, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, right.
But then he had said something else, and she didn't know how to neutralize it. She's like, it didn't work. I'm like, no, honey, it works. See, it didn't even bother you. Here you are talking to me, and you went about your day,
Yeah.
But I think I do vision boards every year.
With your kids as well, or?
So my kids, we do a vision board for what we want to do over the year.
Okay.
So we go through magazines and I print photos of fun times we had. So if we want to do more of that, we put those pictures.
That's interesting.
So we have a big board of pictures of different things, or where we want to travel, or things we want to visit in the UAE.
Yeah, because we do these things as adults, right? But we don't, you don't realize there's a crossover. They could actually be learning that as a skill.
Lovely. It's lovely. It's a fun thing to do with kids.
Yeah.
Because then they set their minds also you find out what they want to do, right? Because they will start dreaming up, and you'll understand do you want to play ball with your mom? Do you want to, it's really nice to see. But I also add in an element on my own vision board. So throughout the year, I save things that inspires me as a parent that I would like to do more of, for instance, or reminders, things that you can say to your children to make them feel more loved, just as visual reminders so I can remember that. And there's a beautiful thing, again, that I kept on mind for this year, which is talking to the stuffed animals.
Okay.
As if the stuffed animal is talking to you about the child. Like, and I can't remember which account, but it was amazing. And basically the stuffed animal goes like, oh my gosh, did you see how quickly she put on her school uniform? I'm like, yeah, I know. She's amazing.
Oh, in front of the child?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they hear that and you see them smile.
Oh, really? Oh.
You know, they hear it and it registers and
That's
it's playing.
brilliant. I love that.
So there's so many.
It's a really subtle way for you to kind of get a compliment across.
Yeah, or
boost their confidence. Or
if they're going to be sleeping, for instance, or when you're waking them up in the morning. I do a lot with the stuffed animals, you know, tons.
Brilliant. That's cool. The one of these I like to talk about is parenting, and we had a conversation outside. You're a single mum.
Yeah.
You've been a single mum for
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of parents join the Warrior Academy as single mums, and I've got an enormous amount of respect for single mums. I guess it kind of stems back to my childhood. My mum was raising 4 of us while she was working full-time in the NHS. My dad, happily married, you know, they're still together now, but my dad would go away for 6 months at a time with the army.
Yeah.
And so she often refers to herself as a single mum.
Yeah, yes, I'm sure she felt like that. Yeah.
Because, you know, as soon as he went away, the fridge would break, the oven would break, you know, the car would break, and you'd have 4 kids who were all very young.
Gosh.
And so she had to deal with all of that. But it was really interesting. I suppose the older kids, me and my sister were the oldest, would then try and look after the younger two. That's the benefit of having lots of kids.
Yeah, but also for you as kids, you have to grow up quicker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? And I think there's lots of challenges involved, and I've got so much respect for single moms because of the fact that a lot of the time they have to balance 2 roles, right? Especially if one of the, you know, if the dad's not around as much, they then have to balance the kind of the masculine energy and the feminine energy. Yeah. We had a brief chat outside about those 2 energies and their influence on childhood. Tell me a little bit about that and your perspective.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you. I think it's hard to balance, and I think even if the children, like my children see their dad a lot, right? But it's the daily things, you know, it's the daily, because I am the mommy and my kids know well and truly that I will always love them. Doesn't matter what they do. They know that, and they're so secure in that they push boundaries a lot with me, right? Which is normal. Again, I think if you research literally children, how much more challenging they are with their mothers compared to any other adult, it's like, I don't know, something crazy, like 500% worse.
Yeah.
That's how they behave around mothers. But that's because, you know, a child knows deep down that the mom is always going to love them. And it's on the daily, so even if they see their father a lot, it's those like normal daily where maybe I just need someone to like, yo, it's enough now. Because with me, they're going to be like, oh, is it? Like,
right, is it really enough?
Is it really though?
Let's see about that. Yeah.
You know, so although they do respect me a lot, but they push the boundaries so much with me. And I think that's such a hard thing, especially when the children know it, you know, like it's leverage in the end, and kids are smart.
Do you think a child's love for their mother is different to their love for their father?
I think it's different, and I think, like we said earlier outside, I think a lot of times children probably love spending time with their father more maybe than with their mom, but I feel at least that children need their mom in a different way, you know, and maybe like you said, maybe because they need the nurturing, and you know, playtime is probably a lot more fun with the dads mostly, like because dads are more risk takers, wilder, whereas like me as a mom, I'd be like, oh, watch, no, please, oh my God, like, please stop, oh, not too close to that, you know? So I'm not as fun maybe to play wildly with, but I'm probably the best at comforting and reassuring or boosting their confidence, like, you know? So I think moms and dads play different roles, generally speaking. Yeah. But I think also, again, going into energy, like you said, masculine and feminine energy, I think there's dads that can be absolutely amazingly nurturing and like fill the mommy role. Yeah. The same way, I think there's some mommies that are really good in filling the daddy role. But yeah, it's hard.
I kind of look at it like, you know, Pareto's law, 80-20, right?
Yeah.
Like a man can have, in totally generalizing, 80% masculine energy and 20% feminine energy. When a man is in his feminine energy, he's nurturing, right? It's looking after the kids, it's cuddling them on the sofa, reading a bedtime story, doing all those kind of really nurturing qualities, which I think men should be doing with their kids. But the 80% is encouraging them to take risks.
Yeah.
putting them in situations where they're uncomfortable,
Yes.
throwing them in the deep end,
Yeah.
playing with them, and maybe someone gets hurt when they're playing,
Yeah.
and trying to give them an experience of uncomfortability so that they
Yeah.
grow and are empowered.
Yeah.
The opposite of that is the kind of feminine role. When a woman's in her feminine energy, she's very much nurturing, protecting,
Yeah.
caring,
Yeah.
and so on, right? And so with that energy, it's like, this is my child, my job is to protect it,
Yeah.
no one can touch my child, sort of thing. And
Yeah.
too much of that protective energy then becomes a big problem because they don't get to grow and leave their comfort zone and understand risk taking and understand pressure and stuff. And exactly as you say, I think that it's this balance, right? And so one of the things I always say is parenting is this balance of protection and empowerment. And somewhere between the masculine and feminine energy is this perfect balance.
Yeah.
Right? If we can find out how to get that in a team and a relationship, you can do that.
Yeah.
And the challenging thing I found with a lot of single parents is then having to take on both those roles. How do you do that if one of them isn't as present?
Yeah. And that comes back to the daily moments, right? Even if you have a really good balance between when you're at mommy's place and when you're at daddy's place, it's the daily, and children's needs don't follow schedules.
Yeah.
So they might need their dad on another day and they might need their mom on daddy's day. So the question is, do you have enough love for your children? Because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
To prioritize them, even if it doesn't work out with your ex-spouse.
Totally.
That's the question. Or are you gonna be selfish, which is the word I would use. It's not easy all the time, but you know what? Your kids didn't tell you guys to get married.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't work out. So what? Like, be civilized. That's it. Prioritize your kids, I think it's taxing on a person to fight with their ex-spouse, and for the children, it's absolutely devastating. There are so many as well divorced people that actually get along, that have really balanced relationships afterwards. Plenty around me examples of that, where, the parents are co-parenting in a very healthy way, like they're happy for each other when they have new partners, and their children, they're fine without that, you know what I mean? Because the children are still the center, they're the core.
I think the worst thing is if they see arguing all the time, right? And then as you said, if you're able to avoid that and you're able to create this healthy environment.
Yeah, and I think, again, touching on what we said, I would never bash my ex-spouse. Why would I do that in front of my kids? They're 50% him.
Yeah.
No way I would ever complain at their father, ever. Whether you have a reason or not, I would never do it, because it's not their burden to carry. They are supposed to just think that mommy is the best ever and daddy is the best ever.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people would make in a separation, right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
Criticizing in front of the kids the other partner.
I would imagine, yeah.
Because then they start to question something that's so important to them.
Yeah.
And I can see that causing a lot of conflict.
I think so. And I mean, I think it's fair. For instance, if I would do something that my children didn't like, or if I would say that, no, you have to go to bed super early or something, I think it's their right to go to their father and say hey, we didn't like that mommy told us to bed early. We weren't allowed to do our sports, Okay, great. But I think he would have the wisdom to be hey, mom is amazing. That wasn't right of her, the action. I think you can say that actions that the spouses or people around you, I think that's fair to say okay, I don't agree with what she did, for instance. But I think as soon as you start character assassination on spouses,
it's a downhill.
The problem is the children take it on themselves.
Yeah.
So they actually end up resenting the person who's talking badly. If you look at the long term of that. So it's so counterproductive. But I do think that people are better at handling divorces, I think they are getting better.
Yeah.
I think there's more tools available, and I think people, because of the research, I think people are making more effort nowadays to if there is a divorce, then I think they're working harder on making it work.
Yeah, more awareness of what the issues are and how to resolve them, right?
And to be honest, fine, divorce is not ideal. Of course, I would love to find someone that I could be married to for decades, like my parents, right? But okay, it didn't work out. That's it. But the divorce thing, like I don't think it has the same stigma anymore. And I think a lot of people start over again in a healthier way than they maybe did before. When divorce was not as common, who's to say that the marriages were better?
Yeah.
Or the childhood for children?
Yeah. When the environment they were living in was healthy.
Was it really good?
Yeah.
Or was it just, or is it better somehow to have a healthy divorce?
Yeah.
What matters the most? Like, so.
Really interesting. Those, I look a lot of, we were talking about nurturing and that sort of stuff, and I see the first 10 years of a child's life
Formative.
being so full of nurturing energy, right? Where the dad often is only kind of, we've talked about how the dad has a nurturing quality, of course, but like they go to mum for everything, right?
Yeah.
Like my kids, 3 and 6, I'm super involved. Like they see me every day. I'm there. As soon as I get back from school, I'm there pretty much every day, right?
Yeah.
But they will run past me to say hello to mum. Like they want to see mum as soon as they get back to school. It is funny, but if there's something really serious, like if one of them's actually hurt, they'll look past me, look past my mum, and look at that and be like, this is serious, right? Because then you kind of need that energy to come in and resolve a crisis.
Yeah.
And you were going back to what you were saying about how they kind of try and negotiate more, right? And something like they push the boundaries 500% more with the mum than the dad, and I think that's true. I think when you are the key nurturer, the primary nurturer in a team, which you typically is, right?
Yeah.
Then they will see you as the person they can try and negotiate the most with, because they always know you're there. They always know that you're there for all the little things. Yeah. And it was interesting. I saw it was an interesting kind of metaphor for this, where it was like if you look at those traditional roles, the mum is like the coach.
Yeah.
And the dad is like the judge of a competition or something.
Yeah.
Right? So it's almost like the mum is there coaching them up, getting them ready, always there, don't worry, next time, all this sort of stuff all the time. Constantly supporting and protecting and nurturing. And the dad is there to be like, right, let's have a look at this, something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
Kind of the judge kind of, role. So yes, it's an interesting kind of perspective on it, isn't it?
No, I think so. And I think children seek a lot of approval from their father. And I think that's a responsibility. I think fathers are more involved now. And I think if you can find the sweet spot between being that, really authoritative male role model, but still be very loving and soft, so that people want to make you happy. The kids want to make you happy rather than feel the pressure of how you will react when they fail.
Yeah.
I think if you hit that, oh my God, then you're going to have the children that come for Sunday dinner with you by choice, not to get the inheritance. You know what I mean? You're going to get those kids that go out for a few years for university, but they're going to come back to you because they want to spend time. It's not that they love you, they like you.
Yeah. There's a big difference. Yeah, totally. I think it's really important for kids to see the nurturing side of dads.
Yeah.
I think that even if you've got I think it's important for dads to have a high masculine energy. Yeah. But I think that it's important for, like my daughter, for instance, right? She will look at the way in which I speak to my wife.
Yeah. And
that's how she will expect to be spoken to by her husband.
100%.
Right? She'll look at the way in which I, raise her and my son, and that's how she will expect her husband to do it, right? Yeah. And so I think language is really important. I think the way in which your kids see you as a dad, having those softer qualities at the right times is really important. And it's that fine balance, right? It's like yin and yang. And if you look at if you're a high masculine man and you've got that, that yin, the kind of the yang is that little dot of nurturing in there, which the kids need to see, right?
They need to see it. And I think irrespective of which parent you are, but especially maybe as a father, you somehow represent the anchor, right? Like the calm, strong protector energy as well, in my opinion at least. So it's also interesting for the children to see okay, but if I aspire to be like daddy, what does daddy do when the world feels too overwhelming? Because the world feels overwhelming to me all the time. What does daddy do when he feels upset? I think it's important to model that as well. Yeah. Because otherwise, the pressure that the children will put on themselves is that they don't have any any margins to feel worse.
Yeah.
You know, or
What does it look like to feel bad and do it anyway?
you know.
I think that we've got a very unhealthy relationship with pressure, and I think that we are trying to avoid pressure as much as we can. We're trying to protect our kids, bubble wrap them, stop them experiencing it.
Yeah.
And really, the focus and the energy needs to be on saying to them, if you want success in life, you need to be able to handle pressure.
Yeah.
Like there's a direct correlation between pressure and success in any field.
Yeah.
100%. And so, but in order to have that, you've got to teach young people how to deal with high pressure.
For sure.
How to deal with when they feel it's too much. What are their coping mechanisms, right?
Sure.
Mindfulness, meditation, breathing techniques, planning, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah. But also that what you do with your body, if you jump up and down, that can kick off endorphins.
Yeah.
Or like, but this comes down to tools again, right? Like my children, when they do their little tests, like they're 8 and they already do tests, like do homework and stuff. I saw them like getting stuck, you know, and they start then to like, oh, you know, they start questioning themselves. I'm like, yo, if this question is too tough, you go to the next one. If it's still too tough, go to the next. Go take the easy ones first. Why? Not to cut corners, but I know because when you achieve something, even if it's small, it creates a boost of endorphins. Yeah. So it will be easier for you to handle the next ones. Like those type of tools, if your parents don't know it, like you will have to figure it out on your own. But this is where I think, especially our generation, can make a difference. Like, does it harm you to watch Tony Robbins once and just find out a little bit, give your kids some tools to use from that seminar?
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting, you know, like you were saying earlier, right? The things that we use for ourselves, why don't we use them for our kids?
100%.
I look at my kids and I think, and even the kids at the Warrior Academy, we teach them skills, which normally you wouldn't teach until they're adults, right? It's like, you know, if my son's really upset, he's 3, he now knows that if I say big breath, he'll do like 4 or 5 big, slow breaths. Yeah. He could be really upset about having to eat broccoli or whatever it is, right? And in tears about it, end of the world. But he'll stop for a second and do his breath. And he gets it, right? Like they understand this is going to calm me down. They can do it on their own.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a superpower when you give young kids, even the age of 3, if you say from the age of 3 to the age of 18, when life really, you know, starts to up in pressure, the coping mechanisms that they can then use, you're setting them up for a life with more of a chance to experience their full potential.
Yeah, because life is tough anyways, irrespective, right? And again, I say that coming from a very privileged position. I do realize that. But for everyone, like, life is not easy. You're always going to have setbacks. And even if you're super successful, you're going to have other pressures that people don't see, you know, because maybe you're responsible for the cash flow or something went wrong. Like, them tables turn quickly, you know? So, like, it's always going to be that. Even harder if you wait, like if you're growing up with a tragedy or a tough childhood or in poverty, of course, like your life is much tougher than mine comparatively. Like, I'm not saying anything. But if you're also growing up in a privileged surrounding or like a bubble, you still have insecurities. You still have things that from your perspective feels super hard. Life is not easy, you know? And I think our job as parents is just to try and make it as less difficult as it's possible, you know, to give them as many coping skills, as many tools as they can, you know, to be responsible for, like, who are they hanging out with? How are they talking to each other? Like, if my child goes up to me like, Mommy, you look fat in that. She's not saying that to hurt me.
No.
She's saying that to check, how does she respond to this? Because what if someone calls me fat? I'd be like, yeah, what are you saying? I feel I'm good. You know, like, they also see then, like, because kids are wild, and like they're wild. They say things, they're unfiltered. And, you know, when they're toddlers as well, like imagine if grown-ups in our environment would be unsteady and accidentally bump into you or push you when they were unhappy. Like, that's not an environment I want to be in. You know how like overstimulated toddlers are? I would go crazy if people around me were just screaming, running around, accidentally bumping in or hitting me or pulling my hair. Like, when I come home after nursery, like if my work was like a nursery environment, I'd probably collapse. So I don't think I can like tell my toddler to stop their tantrum. I think they have the right to have a tantrum.
Yeah. You know? Interesting. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think you've got to give them the space to experience an emotion and process it. Yeah. But then of course there's a cutoff, right, where you've got to.
Yeah. There's also
and I think
the boundaries for where politeness happens
and understanding that their actions affect other people or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
I feel like parenting is very much about empowering kids to live without you. That's like our ultimate goal, right? And so
no, they can live without me. I'll just move to wherever they're moving, so I'll be close to them.
Spoken like a true mum, that was. You know, I look at my wife and our son, and it's funny with mums and their boys. I think there's a special attachment there.
Yeah,
you know,
if you have a boy, it's game over. I've heard.
And I said to my wife, it's like watching the world's slowest breakup, right? It's my job to try to separate you two as much as you can before he becomes an adult.
That's not going to happen. Show that.
That's our job, I guess, right? Yeah. Just to put them in a position where they can live without us. And that's such a difficult, challenging thing to accept.
Yeah. I mean, I just left my parents behind in the country, right?
Yeah.
Imagine, they're all lovely and nice to me. And
yeah.
I'd be like, hey, I want to move, see you.
Move me to the Middle East. See you later.
How mean, you know?
Yeah. After everything they've done.
Yes, really.
So many amazing insights in this chat for parents. Really, really amazing. And if you had to think of, just to finish, on what was the biggest lesson, or what is the biggest lesson that you feel you've had as a parent? And it doesn't have to be Dubai specific, but just in general. What's been the biggest lesson that you've had?
As a parent? Like as me as an experience, or what the kind of parent I want to be? Like, I feel
like parenting is this journey of self-discovery. A bit like martial arts, right? You go through it, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, I think
that's been the biggest lesson.
Learning about myself as a mother, there's a huge takeaway that, obviously I've had a great childhood, but I think considering my children now and how I can sometimes get triggered by what they do, I think I began to question, like, did I have a great childhood or was I the great child? There's a difference there. And looking into people pleasing and, putting yourself second, things like that. I think as a mom, I've gone into just like, my kids are my life. And for a while, I forgot that I need to put the oxygen mask on me first, I think that was the main discovery, that I went straight into my people pleasing, like kids first, whatever. If I don't sleep, no problem. I want to do everything for them, and I drop things. I'll skip a meeting, unless it's like huge. I would just be like, sorry, I can't because my child needs me. Those type of things. It was very tough to get out of that and find a balance, I think. And the cost of that was probably sleep, to be honest, and personal health,
And everything's downstream from sleep.
That's my point.
Sleep's gone, everything's gone.
That's it. You have colds everywhere, it's just, I think it was a huge journey to just get back on track and find that balance. I see that a lot as well in my friends that are high achievers, that childhood, when they have a child, the same way they go into full force at work, they go in with the same commitment as a mom.
Yeah.
And then they try to uphold the work as well. And they just can't. So the first part of being a mom is just like a nosedive. And they're the ones crashing. It's so hard because they want to be perfect mom. And they put so much pressure on themselves. And it takes a while before they level out the flight type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that it was the same for me. I think I put myself aside so much, unnecessarily so. My kids would have still been fine.
Yeah, right. Amazing. Brilliant insight. So put your oxygen mask on first.
Oh yeah, just like Emirates, cool.
Karen, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed today's Warrior Academy podcast episode. We're going to keep creating these episodes because I know that so many parents find them useful or get insights or get ideas about how to develop their child's character. But it all comes down to the 3 C's: confidence, conduct, and concentration. So if you want to get a deep insight into the levels of confidence your child has, the level of concentration they have, or the level of conduct they have, so that you can actually put a score next to it and then work towards increasing those scores like we do in the Warrior Academy, then I'd love to invite you to fill in the Breakthrough Area Assessment. It takes about 5 minutes of your time, and you will get a personalized PDF report on your child's 3 C's. To access the Breakthrough Area Assessment and find out your child's 3 C's score, all you need to do is go to www.breakthrougharea.com.